Embarrassed, the girl tried to say something to the guy, but she couldn't find the right words. Plucking up her courage, the blonde asked the young man for forgiveness, saying that he was a good man, but they could not be together. The young man's ears continued to ring with the words of her friend about how he was a good person, but that they had different values in life. Looking after his friend as she left, the stranger asked the beauty to stop, but she only quickened her pace with every second, which infuriated the guy. Our hero was distressed, remembering that since childhood, when he approached a girl, communication or even friendship would develop between them. But no one ever liked him. Sitting on the ground, the young man shouted that the same thing was happening to him over and over again. He didn't understand what was wrong, but no one ever reciprocated his feelings, only offering to be friends. At that moment, the guy heard a voice that said that a suitable owner had been found and the system had been activated. And while the system continued to report about the loading of the main module, as well as the completion of the loading, the young man shouted about what was happening. A girl appeared in front of our hero, closed her eyes, and declared that this system had its own name. After that, smiling, the stranger said that the system could be called a super guy. This did not please the young man, who stood rooted to the spot, believing that this was someone's stupid joke. Suddenly, the young man went berserk. He started shouting that they were just making fun of him. Most likely the system is called Super Extra, since this is exactly what he constantly experiences. The fairy, addressing the guy as the owner, explained that the system was created precisely to, firstly, help him become a better cultivator, and secondly, to give him the opportunity to become the young man of the goddess. And, winking at her master, she asked what he thought about this, whether such a proposal was interesting. The beauty explained that the guy's task is to take orders, acquire skills, and this will all continue until the owner completes all the tasks presented by the goddess. Our hero was wondering what would happen if he got a bad grade. And the fairy continued to point out that it was important to get a 5-star rating in order to permanently secure 5 skills. If the young man gets a bad grade, his skills will be lowered. And if they are completely absent, she paused for a moment, making a displeased face. But then she suddenly screamed that the system would then take 10 years of the owner's life. The frightened hero did not understand what was being offered to him, believing that it was some kind of treacherous deal with the devil himself. And a minute later, the stranger began to press, saying that if the guy agreed, they could start, but if the system found another owner, this really angered our hero, who was not even given time to think. Holding the alarm clock under the young man's nose, the fairy shouted that they were giving the young man 10 seconds to think, although this was insignificantly little. Suddenly, huge numbers appeared in front of our hero, informing him that the countdown had begun and that he needed to make a balanced decision. Remembering how many times the guy had been abandoned, how many times he had heard rejections, he gritted his teeth and thought that it was time to change everything. Looking ahead, the young man said that it would be better for him to be wrong about all women than for them to be wrong about him. And he added that he dreams of having all the beauties of the world at his feet, so that they do what he wants. Our hero shouted loudly that he had decided to take this order for himself. Unexpectedly, the blonde congratulated the owner on connecting to the super guy system, adding that the data registration was complete and the first order would begin soon. A minute later, a board with various information appeared in front of the young man. The computer announced that the system was filtering keywords, marital status, personality, and even appearance. Not much time passed, and the system notified that the order had been accepted and asked to check it. Xiachen asks her temporary boyfriend to be charismatic, a good drinker, and a kung fu massage master. Realizing that this was the first target, the hero decided that it was quite wild, although he was interested in this proposal. The computer not only gave the boy a task, but also transformed him, informing him that he had been granted a passive skill of immunity to alcohol, as well as the charming eyes and hands of a masseur. For a moment, the guy decided why he felt somehow uncomfortable, but then he decided that it didn't matter. The most important thing was to meet the goddess. While sitting in the car, the young man read a strange message that the goddess had rejected a certain Mr. Wang, whom our hero had never heard of. After asking the driver about the mysterious 4 clans, the young man received the answer that the families control the medicinal resources, hospitals, and the young Master Wang is the second son of the dynasty. Having started to talk about the man being accompanied by 10 Ferraris, the taxi driver suddenly screamed, seeing something in front of him. At the last second, he stopped in front of the motorcycle, which was already standing. Having caught his breath, the driver was glad that he had managed to brake in time, although our hero was unhappy that a traffic jam had formed on the road. Turning to his passenger, the young man declared that from this point on he would have to walk, After slamming the door, the dissatisfied guy said that because of this situation, he might be late for the meeting. Although after hearing the gossip, he thought that this Xia Qian was probably an arrogant girl. Looking ahead, the hero noticed with surprise that his goddess was not far from him. The beauty was grabbed by some blonde guy to whom she was trying to convey that she already had a chosen one. And while the young man was thinking that in life she was much better than in the photo, the showdown between the two young people continued. A showdown in which the young man wanted to know where this very beloved guy was. Crying, Xia Qian begged them to let her go, adding that her chosen one would come very soon because he really existed. With one simple movement, grabbing the offender's hand, the guy screamed that they shouldn't even think about touching his beloved. And while the enemy was talking about the fact that he was facing a real scumbag, the system immediately notified that the kung fu skill had been activated. The blonde didn't understand what was happening to him and why he had such a strange reaction from just squeezing his wrist. After dealing with his opponent, the young man turned to Xia Qian to ask what was wrong. But to his great surprise, the place where she had stood before was already empty. The beauty, sitting on her knees, was crying. She said that she suddenly felt weakness in her limbs and therefore did not notice how she sank to the ground. Looking at the girl, the young man realized with horror that he had completely forgotten to deactivate his skill, which turned out to be so powerful. Leaning towards the girl, our hero politely asked if everything was okay with her, and then invited her to stand up. The big and beautiful, albeit tear-stained eyes of the guy's beloved looked straight at him, and a whole storm of feelings could be read in them. At this moment, the system notified that the owner had successfully fulfilled the goddess's requirements. The charming eyes skill was activated. Suddenly, the girl took the young man by the hand and moved as close to him as possible. And a moment later, their lips merged in a sensual kiss. And it was a little embarrassing for both her and him. The dark-haired beauty looked closely at her savior, at the one in whom she found something special, and he, in turn, cried theatrically, thanking the amazing system for everything. Suddenly, the idol was interrupted by someone's rough voice, which shouted that all sorts of scum should not touch what did not belong to them, which alerted our hero. Realizing that it was necessary to defend the honor and good name of both, the boy deactivated the charm skill and was about to take the next step. Hearing the girl being insulted, our hero suddenly intervened, telling Mr. Wang that Xia Qian was his beloved, and therefore he had the right to kiss her. Embarrassed, the culprit of this event began to lament, saying that she felt very awkward. The ill-wisher was not going to stop there. He said that he wanted to see what the poor wretch who decided to take what belonged to him was capable of. To show his status, the blonde pointed to the boxes, saying that he knew that Xia Qian's father loved good wine, and so he prepared a small souvenir for him. Continuing to play his role, Wang asked the girl for forgiveness, although she proudly shouted that the guy was cowardly and two-faced, and that she did not need his handouts. At this point, our hero entered the conversation and nevertheless offered Xia Qian to accept the apologies and gifts. But this angered the beauty even more. Crying, the girl did not understand how the young man could say such terrible words. But he suddenly changed his rhetoric, noting that he would deal with his opponent. And while some were sorting out the wine, the beauty, with some irritation, declared that for now she would be with our hero, although she didn't know who he was, which was extremely strange. Finally, the young man proudly said his name, which sounded like Lin Yi, saying that he was a super guy who needed to receive a 5-star rating. At this time, a conversation between two men was heard from behind the door, which concerned our heroine. The drunk man, hugging Van, declared that he was very lucky to have such a person. With him, his daughter was in good hands. Running into the room, an enraged Xia Qian yelled at her father. She didn't understand how he could get drunk so quickly. Seeing the girl, the man said that the hero of the occasion had just arrived and that she would now pour them drinks, not suspecting that she had a young man who, although embarrassed, introduced himself. Deciding to celebrate, the head of the family first took a sip of the drink, and then, when the meaning of the words reached him, his eyes widened in surprise. Approaching our hero, the man happily introduced himself and said that he was very pleased that his daughter had such a good boyfriend. Realizing that it was too early to introduce themselves, Xia Qian immediately hurried to push her father out of the living room, saying that it was time for him to go to his room to sleep. The head of the family did not want to talk, and so he justified himself by saying that you don't get drunk from 2 glasses of wine. Turning to Lin Yi, the beauty whispered in a low voice for the young man to be careful, as he might get drunk. Looking closely at his friend, our hero told her not to worry about him since he had never been afraid to drink. the irritated blonde man said with anger in his voice that some poor guy had taken his girlfriend. And for that, he wanted to see him suffer, remembering what had happened a few minutes earlier. And earlier, there was Wang pouring wine into 4 glasses while talking with Xiaqian's father. The young man called the man daddy, insisting that he drink the fine drink, after first placing a strong sleeping pill at the bottom of the glass. The cunning blonde wanted her friend's father to drink himself to death. And so he said that until they could leave the table, they would not go anywhere. Now our hero was in the place of the head of the family, who, having drunk the first glass, declared that the drink was as delicious as he had never drunk before. Wang knew that the pill would soon take effect on his guest, but he did not understand why the young man in front of him began to see double, since he could not get drunk. The skill was activated. Despite this, Lin Yi still lost consciousness, falling onto the table. And again, loud laughter was heard from behind the door where the young people were. Entering the room, Xiaqian was horrified to see that her friend could no longer even sit still. Hearing his drinking buddy say that he got drunk quickly and with pleasure. Approaching the young man, the beauty began to shake him, demanding that he wake up as soon as possible. Watching this scene, Wang said that he never thought that the girl would get involved with such a loser. Taking off his shirt and pointing to his tattoo, the young man asked which part of Lin Yi's body was better than his, then ordered the guards not to leave the building without his permission. Xiaqian screamed and told the guy not to come near her because, at the very least, it was simply illegal. Backing away, our heroine declared that she was the owner of a television company, but did not have time to finish speaking because she tripped and fell on her back. Rejoicing, the ill-wisher triumphantly declared that the girl should resign herself to her fate, adding that her father and friend had drunk wine that contained a sleeping pill, and therefore they would sleep for a long time. Xiqian watched in horror as the funny guy in the pink suit shouted something about a turtle. Having recovered, our hero not only caught up with his opponent, but also managed to deftly grab him by the legs, which shocked the blonde. Looking at Lin Yi, the young man shouted that this couldn't be happening. He should have been sleeping and not getting into a fight. Grabbing the blonde's ankle even tighter, the young man decided that now was the time to use one of the skills he had. Having spun the man around, he threw him far back, saying that he deserved it. The unsuspecting guards were whispering among themselves at that moment, saying that their master had a new pastime. He, in turn, asked his guest how it was possible for him to wake up, since he had been drunk just a couple of minutes ago. Putting his feet on his opponent's chest, the guy said that he could try the drink he gave everyone, and a moment later began pouring it into Van's mouth. Our hero smiled. He wanted to see what the drunk gentleman would look like. Looking at Lin Yi, the owner of the house honestly admitted that our hero was quite strong, and he simply watched as the blonde man, lamenting, muttered something under his breath. Realizing that Wang was just clowning around by calling himself the most courageous person, the young man and girl laughed loudly, asking why in that case the master of the house didn't show himself. And just a moment later, the guy picked up speed and ran towards the window, although no one present understood what he was going to do. Jumping out of the window, the elated blonde began to shout something about the sunrise and dancing with the clouds. When Wang landed on the ground, he didn't expect that the angry residents of the area would start shouting at him and driving him away, saying that it had been a long time since hooligans had been active in their house. The boys were surprised that this young man was not afraid to jump from the 3rd floor, hoping that he would never show up in these parts again. At the same time, Xiaqian thanked the young man for saving her. Not knowing what to say, Lin Yi quickly explained that it was nothing special as it was the duty of a super guy, which greatly surprised the beauty. After that, she asked the guy if he wasn't interested in why she made the order, and also why she included so many strange requests. Not knowing what to say, embarrassed, our hero assumed that the girl could have many different hobbies, which infuriated her. Turning away, Xiaqian explained that she could not answer all these questions in such a short time, and so invited the young man to come into her apartment. The guy's reaction was ambiguous because, on the one hand, he wanted it, but on the other hand, he didn't think that the beauty would offer something like that so quickly. In Lin Yi's mind, everything was not just wonderful but perfect, and he was confident that everything would turn out the same way in life. Opening the door a little, the girl timidly said that they were in her bedroom. Realizing that the young man was hesitating for some reason, the temporary lover quickly grabbed our hero by the hand and pulled him into the room, saying that he was too indecisive. The young man shouted that he didn't understand what the rush was about, since they still had the whole night ahead of them. But suddenly the boys stopped. They were taken aback by the fact that in the beauty's bedroom, on her bed, her father was lying, drunk and tied up. Xiaqian was silent. She bowed her head and looked somewhere down. Her eyes showed melancholy and despair. The girl slowly said that 5 years ago her father was in a car accident in which her mother died. The man still blames himself for this. It hurts him, and he dreams of finding a suitable young man for her. Sitting on the bed, with sadness in her voice, our heroine continued to say that her parent drowned his sorrows in alcohol every day, getting new bruises and cuts whenever he got drunk. The beauty didn't expect to find someone good. She just wanted to please her father, and so it didn't matter who she started a relationship with. Suddenly, pressing the guy against the wall, the hostess of the room confidently asked if he could buy her something very important for lunch. The embarrassed young man shouted that his beloved could ask for whatever she wanted, since he was her boyfriend and would do whatever was necessary and do it with honor. Smiling, Shakia noted that there was no need to worry so much. She just knew that her super young man was good at massage. Our hero started to scream strangely, which surprised his friend very much, but after a minute he pulled himself together, saying that massage was not a problem for him. As she left the room, the girl thanked Lin Yi for this, saying that she would go and cook dinner because it was advisable to eat well before the massage. Already standing at the door, the beauty was thinking about the fact that her guest was clearly still worried about something, although he was pretending that everything was fine. At this time, our hero remembered about activating the charming eyes, realizing that it was necessary to turn on this function earlier. But at that moment, the fairy appeared, saying that there was no need to listen to the devil. He was lying, since their system was a general-purpose super guy and worked as standard. And she added that a young man should not leave an entire lake for a pond, thinking that the owner would get the hint. Lin Yi folded his arms and asked his assistants not to argue, saying that he was a decent person. At this time, the guards who had put Mr. Wang in the car asked if he was feeling better. With anger in his voice, the guy said that he got drunk because of his own pill. He was deceived like an ordinary boy. Turning around, the guard said that this was not all the news. The fact is that many people on the internet were already discussing what happened. With hatred in his voice, Wang shouted that no one had the right to post the video of his disgrace online. It was simply low. And then he shouted that the incident should be reported to Black Panther immediately. Clutching the phone tighter and tighter, the young man said that he wanted to make Ling Yi suffer in front of Xia Qian. Sitting in the living room, our hero watched the girl who was preparing dinner. Thinking that it all smelled very aromatic, suddenly, the young man's attention was drawn to a photo that was standing on the table, and which he picked up. The guy didn't understand whether this was really a family portrait, but if it was, then his beloved also had a sister. A minute later, Xia Qian appeared, making excuses, asking for forgiveness for the poor hospitality, adding that the dining room was occupied by bottles of wine, and therefore they would eat in the living room. Hearing that the beauty cooks very rarely because she works, the young man shouted that it doesn't matter at all, because he will gladly eat everything that she brings him. But suddenly something happened that no one expected. Tripping over the edge of the table, the girl got caught in such a way that she dropped the plates from her hands and flew forward. At the last moment, our hero grabbed Xia Qian and shouted if she was okay. Embarrassed, the mistress of the house thanked Lin Yi, who smiled and began to say something about being careful. But a second later, a plate that had been in flight before fell on the guy, which caused the girl great surprise. While the guy was saying that he had nothing against scrambled eggs with tomatoes, the girl tried to remove the plate from the guest's head and then said that she would find her father's clothes for him. Sitting on the sofa, Xia Qian rubbed her sore knee, quietly saying that she herself did not understand how she could have hit herself so hard. Suddenly, a young man appeared behind her. He thanked her for the clothes, saying that he had already taken a shower, and the robe fit him quite well, although the beauty said that it was a little small. After this, the young man pushed the girl a little towards the sofa, who immediately screamed, wondering what he was going to do. While stretching his sore leg, Lin Yi calmly explained that the lady of the house had completely forgotten about his skills, and yet he was a master of massage, including such types. Realizing that the procedure had to be done properly to get credit, the guy started pressing in different places, choosing specific points. The effect was not long in coming, as the beauty said that it was something incredible. The embarrassed hostess of the house said that her leg no longer hurt, sincerely thanked her savior, adding that he had done a lot for her not only in the evening, but throughout the day. And, taking Lin Yi, she added that the living room was a mess. It would take a long time to clean up, and therefore the young man could spend the night in the bed. A second later, the guy happily thought that this system was ideal, although there was one nuance. Finding himself in the same bed with Xia Qian's father, our hero was angry that his friend had not specified which bed he would sleep in, and spending the night with a snoring man was a big test for him. At this time, under cover of night, Some man quietly opened the door to the apartment and was already entering inside. As he moved around the room, Black Panther thought that he had been hungry for a long time and hadn't been on a mission for a long time. Lin Yi, who couldn't sleep because of the snoring, decided to go out to the living room to clear his head a bit. The villain standing behind the door did not understand why not everyone was asleep at this time of night. Our hero, in turn, was thinking about what he should do if he went to sleep on the sofa. Then Xia Qian would understand that the young man left because of her father, and therefore would give a low rating, and this would become a real problem. But at that moment, something unexpected happened. Black Panther, standing in the corridor, quickly pounced on the guy, wanting to catch him off guard. The blow was precise and powerful. The young man fell to the floor unconscious. After a while, Lin Yi opened one eye and saw a tied-up figure sitting on the sofa. It was the mistress of the house who could only cry and moan. The very next minute, the guy turned his gaze to his wounded leg, into which the enemy had plunged a knife. But what surprised our hero most was not this, but why he did not feel pain. Realizing that this was most likely a terrible dream that was about to end, looking at the villain, the young man fearlessly asked who was in front of him and why this person wanted to harm him, since they didn't even know each other. Grabbing the young man by the face, Black Panther screamed that the dead boy didn't need to know this and then punched him hard in the forehead. But Lin Yi did not lose his head, and therefore launched a counterattack that his ill-wisher did not expect. Shouting that the man desired the boy, he plunged the knife even harder into our hero's leg. Rejoicing that Lin Yi was so helpless, the villain said that it was his own fault and that he shouldn't have behaved like that. And, hitting the guy again, he shouted that he was going to continue this in order to fully enjoy such a spectacle. Swinging, he added that he wanted to find out who was stronger, him or our hero's abilities. Despite the beatings, the young man did not break down. Moreover, he said that now it was his turn to show who is who. At this moment, our hero masterfully tried to untie the ropes, hearing a message from the system that a new skill of kung fu massage of a special style was revealed to him. The young man wanted to do something, but suddenly the villain stabbed him in the side with a knife. As the boy lost consciousness, he thought that it was wrong even with such a system. Lin Yi was upset that he could not get rid of the image of a loser. Grabbing his victim by the head, Black Panther screamed that the young master warned him that the boy had some strange tricks, but in fact he turned out to be an ordinary weakling. And to confirm the judgment of his words, he pushed the guy to the other end of the room. Gloating, the man said that in this world one must remember one important formula. If one wants to survive, one must bow one's head before the rulers of the world. If you resist, the strong will show no mercy and will destroy the boy with just one move. Sitting on the sofa, the tied-up mistress of the house understood that she really wanted to do something, although she couldn't, no matter how hard she tried. But our hero was not worried about him, but about the girl, and so he boldly declared that Black Panther should not even think about touching Xia Qian. Having untied the ropes, the ill-wisher said that nothing would happen to the beauty, since the young master had ordered not to hurt her. Having freed herself, the hostess of the house immediately ran up to her guest and began asking him to get up. Realizing that the guy had serious wounds, the beauty asked him to hold on and not even dare to die. Crying and wailing, Xia Qian explained that it was entirely her fault. If she hadn't ordered the super guy for herself, then there would have been no conflict with Wang, and therefore none of this would have happened. And only Lin Yi, who found himself in a piquant situation, was thinking about something completely different at that moment. He was pleased that the girl was so close. Concentrating, our hero remembered his whole life, important key moments, deciding for himself that he was getting used to failures. But was it worth doing this? Was it right? Having started to cry, the young man decided that he did not need a life full of failures. It did not bring anything good anyway. However, at that moment, a blue light appeared in front of the super guy. Suddenly, all emotions faded into the background, and common sense took over. The fairy who came to Lin Yi's aid told him that new settings had been discovered for the client and suggested that he accept them. With sadness and resignation in his voice, the young man noted that his assistant was persistent and responsible, but he could no longer play with her. But the fairy did not listen to him. She repeated that he had to make a decision and do it as soon as possible. Suddenly, the assistant shouted that the changes had been accepted and that the transformation stage was beginning. The girl lying on Lin Yi's chest was crying, and the villain said that it was unnecessary, since the boy had only lost consciousness, continuing to note that he had an easy job. At this point, the system declared that the mission was completed and some other process was beginning. The blue glow that permeated our hero gave him more and more strength and confidence with each passing second. This energy gave the young man the energy that, after a couple of seconds, he was already on his feet. Standing behind the back of a non-ill-wisher, Lin Yi understood that he would not let him go so easily, especially after what had happened. The guy's eyes were shining, and the system continued to announce that a new passive skill had been acquired. A second later, with his hand outstretched, the young man was ready to pounce on Black Panther. Grabbing him by the throat, he held the villain as tightly as he was able to do so. Looking at the man with a withering gaze, Lin Yi pounced on him, knocking him down. Black Panther was angry. He didn't understand where an ordinary person got so much strength and endurance from. The only thing that made him happy was that he had a knife hidden somewhere. A second later, the enemy raised his leg, to the sole of which the blade was glued. But this was done in vain, since our hero broke the blade with one powerful movement of his hand. The surprised man, looking at everything that was happening, could not believe that such a thing was happening at all. Only a minute had passed, and our hero had already called upon the power of light to help him. Out of fear, a puddle accidentally appeared under Black Panther, a sign of weakness and his shame. However, something suddenly went wrong. Looking at the villain, the young man realized that he was getting worse with each passing minute, and so he fell to the floor. Lying on the floor, Lin Yi thought that this all started from the very beginning. Although he did not specify what exactly, opening his eyes, the young man did not immediately understand where he was. Looking at his watch, the young man realized that it was morning, but he still did not fully understand what had happened. Xiaqian's father explained that our hero was at their home, adding that Ling Yi had probably had too much to drink the night before. At that moment, a sleepy beauty came out of the room, who also seemed to be in some kind of confusion. Rubbing her eyes, the girl wanted to tell her father something about last night. But when she saw her super guy, she almost fainted from surprise. The beauty continued to repeat how it could happen that he was alive. The young man did not understand why he had to die if his body was in perfect order. Seeing Ling Yi explaining himself, Xiaqian said that she was so worried about him, but it was all completely in vain. Realizing that it was time to end this conversation, everyone gathered sat down at the table to have breakfast and discuss some things. The man heard his daughter say that they had not spoken to Lin Yi the day before, but the parents said that there was no need as long as the young man behaved decently. Suddenly, the beauty said that in the evening Wang Qiwen wanted to do something to her, but her new acquaintance helped her, although perhaps it was just a dream. It seemed that this was big news for our hero. Looking somewhere, he wondered how this could have happened. Scratching his head, the father said it was his fault because he had always wanted to find a decent boyfriend for his daughter. But she told him to take better care of himself, changing the subject to her desire to visit her former workplace. The man explained that he was a soldier, a veteran, with a lot of experience, but that was all in the past, and now he couldn't even beat a middle-aged man. After these words, the guy was dumbfounded. He remembered everything that happened the night before and thought that it was something incredible. The young man wanted to ask about something, but the parents shouted that the young man probably doubted the words that had been said earlier. Although the owner of the house immediately began to show off his biceps, saying that he was not as old as he might seem, and then shouted for everyone to eat the eggs, otherwise they would get cold. While putting on her shoes, the girl said that it was time for her to go to work, and that Lin Yi would give her a ride, and he also politely said goodbye. Smiling, the man wished the boys a safe journey and a good day, adding that they would see each other soon. Left in the apartment, Xiaqian's father immediately called Xiaolong, asking if he was busy, and, turning his gaze to the tied-up Black Bagheera, he added that if his friend had time, he could come to help in one delicate matter. Walking down the street, the girl spoke with embarrassment about how she had had a rather strange dream that night, which she could not understand. The young man looked closely at his friend, but did not know what he could tell her. Without listening to Xiaqian to the end, the young man began to shout that the time of their contract was ending. Hearing how the beauty with sadness in her voice stated that this was to be expected, the girl didn't know what else she could say, so she just looked ahead. But the next moment, Lin Yi grabbed his friend by the hand and declared that they were urgently going to look for a suitable young man. The tearful beauty said that the guy shouldn't do this because, in the end, their relationship is a simple contract. Hearing that our hero's work was finished, he began to get indignant, shouting that his words and intentions were absolutely serious, and so that the girl would not even think to doubt it. He took her, pressed her to himself, and kissed her tenderly. Looking at her temporary boyfriend, Xiaqian said she hoped that the young man would never forget her. After this, the beauty turned away and proudly told the young man to leave. Realizing that his temporary lover was leaving, Lin Yi shouted that he was looking forward to their next meeting. Still crying, the girl said out loud that this is how it will be and finished the task, and the system immediately notified our hero that he received 5 stars for completing the task. Smiling, the fairy noted that for this, the owner could receive a new permanent skill, although it seemed that he had no time for this. Having pressed some button, the guy honestly said that he didn't care, although he immediately thanked the assistant, adding that he was glad that she had changed his life. But the fairy was not in the mood for compliments. She was angry that the young man ran his finger across her cheek and then told him not to touch her. Realizing that a choice had to be made, Li Yi thought about which skill would be most useful to him. And the most optimal seemed to be the revival skill, with which he could remain invincible. A moment later, the guy extended his hand forward, declaring that now he had definitely made a choice. Seeing the rainbow, the young man shouted that it was something amazing. But for some reason, the system notified that the guy was getting charming eyes. Indignantly, our hero shouted that this was not at all what he needed, and therefore, if possible, he would like to buy the revival skill, and not some charming eyes. Lying in bed, the young man complained that he had no beloved. He had offended a rich family that could hire a mercenary to get even with him. All this did not look like a super guy system, but like some kind of deception. But before the young man had time to think about anything else, the door to the room opened with a bang, because someone kicked it. There was a stranger standing in the bedroom looking closely at Lin Yi and saying that he had finally returned. The guy yelled that he wanted to rest, and Xu Xiaojing distracted her. Moreover, she entered his apartment without asking and yelled, but the girl's reaction was not what our hero thought. Coming up close to him, she said that he had been missing for several days, and now he still dared to joke with her. Understanding that everything was serious, the young man understood that the girl was clearly involved in taekwondo and had made progress in this area. Not wanting to give Lin Yi a break, his friend said that he had never paid rent, yet he still dared to show up like that. The young man tried to explain everything to Xu Xiaojing, so he grabbed her leg to tell her everything in detail, but instead, he made the landlady even more angry. Having landed practically on his girlfriend, our hero nevertheless began to justify himself, saying that he had some minor problems with money. The guy was sure that at the very least he needed a slap. But instead, the beauty said that she would no longer hit her tenant, although he did not understand what had happened to her. At this time, one of Mr. Wang's assistants came to see him and wanted to report something. Bowing, the man explained that he had been given to understand that if anything happened to the Xia family again, the young master would suffer the same fate as Black Panther. Looking at the beaten man, the owner immediately ordered to contact Feng Jun. With anger in his voice, the boy declared that it was time to change the order of the great families, and it was Ye Xianglong who pushed him to do this. Lin Yi complained that the charming eyes skill had activated at the most inopportune moment and could land him in jail, so he wanted it to turn off as soon as possible. A second later, the surprised Xu Xiaojing slightly raised herself, blushed, and looked closely at the guy. Having delivered a powerful blow with her fist to the face of her tenant, the girl screamed that not even his spirit should be in her apartment. The beauty did not understand how to describe the act that this bad man had committed. The young man understood that he had nowhere to go, and so he banged his head on the floor and asked his friend not to throw him out, because he had nowhere to go. The young man said that the money would be there in just a couple of days, and then he began to play on her pity, hearing Xu Xiaojing angrily declare that she would come when she had the money. And as she was leaving the door, she added that the young man should not even think about using his tricks on her anymore because it was shameless. After that, she noted that he should also reimburse the cost of the door, which infuriated our hero, because she had knocked down that door just a couple of minutes ago. Not knowing what to do, Lin Yi sat on the floor complaining. But at that moment, Fairy suggested that the guy take the order that had come in. After that, the assistant said that since the client was special, the system should test some transformations on him, which surprised the guy very much. Looking at the computer, the young man noticed that the applicant had to be a good singer with a good voice, a martial artist, and also a transgender. The last point greatly irritated our hero, who immediately began to shout that the system should not dare to change him. Sitting down on the chair, Lin Yi began to check if everything was in place and was surprised to note that for some reason he didn't feel anything at all. And while the young man was sorting out the changes that had taken place in him, he heard a knock at the door. Entering the room, the girl casually said that there was a competition at her school, and then asked if the guy could sing. This news came as a real shock to the young man, who understood that he would probably have to sing after all. Realizing that this task was much more difficult than the previous one, Lin Yi shouted so loudly that the entire area could hear him. At this time, Wang, having lit a cigarette, turned to Master Feng and said that he wanted to see him, but did not give the reason because he was interrupted. The guest ordered the guy to put out his cigarette, adding that he needed to prepare for the competition, which infuriated the owner of the house. Not wanting to waste time, Wang explained that 70% of the real estate in their city belonged to the Ye family, and wouldn't they want the situation in this regard to change dramatically? In addition, Ye Xianglong, who is the head of the family, has a military background and does not even think about business. Madame Ye Qingzhou takes care of everything. He added that if the young man managed to deal with this woman, it would only be a matter of time before the Ye family would be absorbed. Showing Wang a video of the house's residents running after him, Feng said that he liked girls who were younger than him, but his peer probably liked even grandmothers. With joy in his voice, the young man said that their family owns the media, and therefore tomorrow this video will appear everywhere possible. And leaving, he added, "It's already late, even if Van is interested in this material, although he can still hurry." Left alone, the owner of the house thought to himself that the time would come when he would destroy this family and also fool this man's 4 sisters. After this, the guy ordered not to touch Xiaqian for now. And as for our hero, it was necessary to find out everything possible about him in order to prepare an unusual gift. The club was noisy. The audience asked Feng Jun to come on stage, who promised to sing a song about a bad girl. With sadness in her voice, Xiao Ya said that this show-off had arranged everything in advance in such a way that he could turn the competition into his personal performance. This man does not like to lose, and therefore he will destroy everyone who stands in his way, which his friend did not quite agree with. Xiao Yu was saddened, realizing that she had agreed to a bet in which she would have to become this Feng's girlfriend if he managed to take first place. The girl said that firstly, the bet could always be broken, and secondly, if he dared to offend the beauty, she would deal with this bad guy immediately. Xiao Yu understood that this young man had an influential family, and therefore she would not be able to run away from him for long. Despite this, she had a backup plan, which included Lin Yi. Having finally found his client, our hero approached her and directly declared that he was her new super guy. When the girls turned around, the young man almost lost his power of speech because in front of him stood the one who had threatened him just a few hours ago. Pointing at the young man, the girl told her friend not to even think about trusting this liar, who is also a loser, unable to even pay his rent. The landlord was shocked to learn that the man was transgender, but her friend explained that he was the one she needed because she suffered from heterophobia. Xu Xiaojing was angry. She knew that Ling Yi was not who he claimed to be, so she hit him with all her might. Blushing, the young man understood that it was very painful, but he decided to keep silent about it, realizing that no one would feel sorry for him anyway. The surprised beauty said that there was nothing there, nothing to hit, while Xiao Yu apologized to our hero, saying that her friend was very impulsive. Smiling, the guy said that during these 2 days he would do whatever his mistress ordered him to do to make her happy. As Feng walked onto the stage, he could hear the cheers of the audience who simply adored him. Having seen his competitor, the young man immediately began to hint that he was not a man, receiving the answer that it was good that the red-haired man was a man who smelled exactly the same. It finally dawned on Lin Yi that the competition that Xu Xiaojing had mentioned that morning was taking place right now. And while the girl continued to assure Xiao Yu that this fake transgender was just a liar, the contestant said that she wanted to trust her instincts about this guy. Assessing this girl, our hero thought that she, most likely, had encountered cases of discrimination, like him, was unhappy, and therefore really wanted to help her. At that moment, the contestant said out loud that she completely trusted her super guy and believed that he would be able to represent her at the competition. Approaching Feng, our hero declared that he wanted firstly to participate in the competition, and secondly, he wanted to make a bet. If he lost, then he and the girl would be able to do whatever the opponent wanted. And in a quieter tone, he added that if he did win, he would have to dance naked on stage. Standing on Lin Yi's foot, the ill-wisher declared that the young man was the first to challenge him, and therefore he agreed to accept it. Although our hero immediately said in a quiet tone that it was unclear who would be the winner and who would be the loser, looking closely into the eyes of his opponent. In just a moment, Lin Yi was standing on the stage, although the audience was shouting that they didn't know who this person was, and therefore didn't know what he was doing there. Suddenly, everyone gathered recognized the young man who was studying at the local university, and the spectators immediately began shouting that he was a loser who no one was paying attention to. Our hero didn't care what they said about him at that moment. He had to sing better than the others, and so he asked to turn on the music. And while the crowd was indignant, saying that this talentless person had no place in the competition because he couldn't even recite a poem. The system immediately began activating the singing skill. Suddenly, the young man began to sing, and so piercingly that no one expected it. Moreover, he danced to the beat, and while the girls said that they had never heard such a beautiful timbre, the assistant assured Feng that they had their own people among the judges. The young man said, no matter how good this Lin Yi was, he still wouldn't pass the selection, so there was no need to worry about it. To their great surprise, the boy began to resist, declaring that they had to have respect for their opponents. Otherwise, it would no longer be a competition. Our hero got so into the role of an artist that he immediately connected the activation of the charm of the eyes to his charming voice. The crowd, which not long ago did not want this man to even stand on stage, now could not take their eyes off him, indicating that they had a real artist in front of them. Bowing and thanking everyone gathered, the guy saw how the judges were already willingly giving him points. The audience continued to cheer. They said that Lin Yi had managed to sing the most beautiful song in the world. Zhu Xiaojing also thought about this, not understanding whether the person in front of her was really the person she knew before. Moving further and further away from the stage, our hero waved his hand to Master Feng, shouting that they would see each other again in the finale. Calling his assistant, the opponent declared that they did not need to be afraid of this boy, because he would not have the opportunity to go up on stage again. After some time, sitting in the establishment, Xiaoyu was happily eating shashlik, saying that it was something incredible, although her friend asked the girl to behave like a real lady. But the beauty didn't care. She said that she was happy because she saw disappointment on Feng's face. Realizing that she had eaten all the barbecue by herself, Xiaoyu asked the young man if she should order some more, and he answered in the affirmative. As she ran away, the girl said that while she was making an order, the guys could chat among themselves. Jumping up from her seat, our hero's friend began asking him what he was up to, hinting that he had started this game for a reason, although the guy did not understand what claims could be made against him. And, pointing to the happy girl, he timidly stated that after communicating with him, her heterophobia began to manifest itself much less. Whispering that it was very good, the young man expected understanding, but instead, Xu Xiaojing shouted that it didn't change anything. But suddenly, some strangers approached Xiaoyu and shouted that young Master Feng was waiting for her, and therefore she should go with them. At that moment, Van arrived with his assistants, and he sarcastically addressed our hero as a temporary super guy. Zhu Xiaojing screamed in desperation that they had to save their friend. But the young man reasoned sensibly, stating that they were outnumbered, even if they tried to fight. It was unclear how it would affect their friend. The girl didn't understand how they could just watch this, realizing that it was unbearable for her classmate to be with the opposite sex for a long time. Turning around, Xiaoyu asked for someone to save her while trying to resist. Lin Yi suddenly shouted that he had made a deal with young Feng Jun, but it turned out that either the guards didn't know about it or the guy had changed his mind. A verbal altercation began. Hearing so much talk about the power of the family, the young man continued to ask, "If this is so, then why resort to such shameful methods?" The man who was given the instructions through the earpiece understood that according to the original plan, he was supposed to pick up the girl, and so he said that he was not going to argue with anyone. Realizing that nothing could be done now, Lin Yi assured that he would not leave Xiaoyu in trouble, but would save her. But later, some of the bodyguards who turned towards the guy shouted that they wouldn't leave him alone like that. Seeing the enemies attacking, the guy immediately activated one of his skills. A moment later, our hero was struck, but he managed to masterfully dodge it. And after that, with one powerful energy flow, he threw everyone gathered in the other direction. The men did not understand where their opponent got so much strength from, hearing the order to attack again. The next minute, Xu Xiaojing also entered the fray, proudly declaring that she would deal with these weaklings herself, and ordered the young man to save their friend. Turning around, Lin Yi saw the beauty being pushed into a white van parked on the other side of the street. That is why the young man ran in that direction as fast as he could, although he encountered an obstacle in the form of a villain on his way. Realizing that his friend needed to be saved at any cost, the guy immediately began to beat the villain. Watching this, both Xu Xiaojing and his opponents could not believe that one boy was able to fight an entire army, and do so with ease. All these strikes were delivered with the utmost professionalism. It seemed as if Lin Yi had been practicing martial arts all his life. Looking at the surprised man, the young man stated that there was nothing strange about his abilities, and, as he struck, he declared that this was one of the dragon's most powerful fists. For a moment, our hero was distracted, although he saw that another thug was moving in his direction. The enemy thought that he would be saved by the pipe with which he wanted to beat the young man. But within seconds, both he and his broken weapon flew to the side. Realizing that there was a lull, the guy looked around, wondering what he should do next. Then he said that there was no need to approach him individually. It was best for them all to turn around and go about their business, and he would go about his. But instead, the opponents once again attacked our hero, declaring that he would regret ever having decided to contact them. Not much time passed, and the villains were already lying on the ground, defeated by Lin Yi. Closing his eyes, the boy said that he could now be considered a martial arts master, although he immediately decided to deactivate the skill, thinking that he didn't need it. Walking up to Xu Xiaojing, the young man immediately asked how she was feeling, seeing that she was out of breath. Smiling, the beauty said that she had only gotten rid of one bad person, and therefore it could be considered that nothing special had happened. Realizing that the girl was tired, our hero suggested that she go and rest while he went in search of their friend. Hearing this, Xu Xiaojing started shouting, saying that she was not a burden, and therefore she also wanted to go look for Xiao Yu. And then the girl started screaming that maybe they needed to call the police, because they had so many witnesses. Approaching the shashlik tent, our heroine wanted to ask something, but the seller immediately stated that he had not seen or heard anything. With anger in her voice, the beauty declared that he was a coward, and if that was the case, then he too could be destroyed, like everyone else. Lin Yi said with despair in his voice that the Feng family was too influential, and therefore it was unlikely that anyone would want to get involved with them. So there was not much hope for the police either, and so he said that they only needed to rely on their own strength. Hearing Xu Xiaojing timidly say that the young man had changed a lot recently, gently placing his hand on his friend's head, the young man asked her to return home before those bad people returned again. As she was leaving, the girl said that she would do as the guy wanted, but he had to promise her that he would definitely return and that he would be safe and sound. Our hero shouted out loud that he would definitely return, but to himself he thought that with this system, girls had somehow magically started to like him. Even his landlord was worried about him. On the way home, Xu Xiaojing thought that if the boy fell into the hands of the enemy, he would definitely be killed. Therefore, he would not pay her for the rent. Taking the phone in her hands, the girl dialed the police number, deciding that this would be the best way out of the current situation. At this time, Lin Yi found the ill-wishers who kidnapped Xiao Yu and extracted all the information about her whereabouts from them. However, this was insignificantly little, because the guy knew exactly about the traps that were waiting for him and should have known about them. Interesting events took place in the hotel that our hero was told about. One of Feng's assistants came to him to tell him that they had learned everything they could about Ling Yi. After this, the man said that the guy had previously been a loser, but after getting involved with Xia Tian, he immediately began to be in great demand among the female sex. Lost in thought, the red-haired boy smiled and said that it might sound strange, but he began to admire this man. The young master immediately ordered rumors to be spread that Ling Yi had betrayed Xia Tian, and so she decided to resign. Smiling, the young man admired himself, saying that if Mr. Wang was betrayed, he would forgive it because he was weak. But he was a completely different matter. But before the guy could finish speaking, he heard some strange sound. Seeing one of the guards lying on the sofa, huddled up, Feng began to ask about what happened outside. Having shown himself in all his glory, our hero declared that the villain should let Xiao Yu go, and he could fight him if he so desired. At this time, Wang's assistant said that some miss called and asked him to return the goods to the transformation room, and he added that if something suddenly happened to the goods, the lady would most likely have to stay in the capital. When answering the phone, the young man said that he knew what his older sister had to go through after their parents left. But now, he had problems that needed to be solved, and then he would take care of everything. The girl told the guy to do what he had to do, but she thought to herself that she had lived in the capital for so long and could not take care of her family, and now was the time to do it. As Feng's assistant approached, he shouted at Lin Yi saying that he had no right to appear in this area. But he didn't have time to finish his sentence because the young man knocked him out with one movement of his hand. The frightened hotel owner did not understand what was happening, noting that he did not see Xiao Yu, but our hero did not intend to play games, which he openly said. Having attacked the young man with his fists, the red-haired young man began to insult him, not expecting that his opponent would easily parry him. Grabbing the villain by the neck, Ling Yi declared that if he liked to take the hard way, they would follow it. Although Feng continued to shout that he had never touched Xiao Yu. After this, the red-haired man shouted that our hero could destroy him, but instead of saving him, he would have a lot of problems. Just at that moment, the bodyguards rushed at the young man to protect their master. Having grabbed the gentleman, the men tried to carry him to a secluded place, but Lin Yi was not going to retreat. Entering the room, Wang said in an indifferent tone that by chance they were meeting Feng again, who seemed to be in a less than ideal situation. Realizing that help had arrived, the young man immediately began asking the blonde to get rid of the poor fellow, hearing that he was going to do it anyway. Coming closer to our hero, Van said that until today he did not understand how he managed to defeat Black Panther, hearing that the young man was interfering in someone else's business. Stretching his hand towards his opponent, the guy said that he wanted to make the young man suffer. That was his only desire. Pointing his fist at his opponent, our hero said that if he wanted a showdown, then there would definitely be one. Realizing that Lin Yi was not going to stop, he began to manipulate Xiao Yu. Hearing about dirty games, the blonde immediately laughed. He shouted that the most important thing for him was to beat his opponent, and how it was done was completely unimportant. After patting Vanu, his friend said that he didn't think that he was actually going to take revenge for his own reputation. After that, he snapped his fingers and ordered the guards to get up to deal with everything that had happened. Wang watched the hotel owner closely, not understanding what he was planning or whether they were on the same side. But at this moment, Lin Yi walked up close to the blonde man, telling him that he was being too arrogant, before flipping him over and throwing him onto the floor. Swinging his weapon, the young man shouted that it was time to see which of them was stronger and more resilient. 40 minutes before, while dealing with one of the guards, the guy turned on the charm skill to find out everything the enemy knew about Xiao Yu. The young man said that Wang had kidnapped the girl, but he had done it on behalf of Feng in order to lure our hero to the hotel. Afterwards, the guard said that his master would be on the 67th floor at that time, and they were ordered to closely monitor the operation. After thinking about it, Lin Yi decided that the blonde man was very cunning. If he reported this to Feng, he could show him that they were not enemies. At this time, the video camera recorded absolutely everything that happened in Feng's room. The security saw that everything was not going according to plan, and so the guys ordered reinforcements to be sent. Our hero screamed and declared that he was asking for the last time where Xiao Yu was. Hearing Wang start to mock the young man again, suddenly, Feng intervened in the conversation. He told the blonde to immediately let the girl go, adding that he would spare the young man for the sake of his older sister, which made his opponent laugh. The guy shouted that the red-haired man was spoiled by his sisters and therefore knew nothing about life, and added that even if he let Xiao Yu go, she would still choose someone else. And while Feng called the blonde a fool, our hero shouted at Van, telling him to return his friend. The ill-wisher openly mocked the young man. He convinced him that if the guy thought about beating him, then only the girl would be worse off. Hearing that they called him crazy, the young man said that soon it would all become clear. It would be clear who was who. A moment later, Wang snapped his fingers, and at that moment one guard pounced on the other. Watching as a few bodyguards easily dealt with everyone else, Feng shouted that this was something incredible. Our hero was not only surprised but also alarmed. He had never seen anything like this, but he understood that the strength of these people was above average. Just at that moment, several more people came in, and Xiao Yu was with them, but she was unconscious. Lin Yi screamed. He was stunned because his landlord was also with his friend. Feng immediately assumed a defensive stance, but the blonde man, with a calm voice, hinted that his friend had once loved to take pictures of all sorts of things, but now he needed the camera for himself. Nobody understood why this madman needed the equipment, but Wang said that if they gave it to him, he would show what would come of it. And then he condescendingly replied that he would allow their family to access the signal, since he wanted to broadcast on the Cloud City channel. The red-haired guy was indignant. He did not understand what kind of broadcast they were talking about, adding that if they did it as the young man suggested, the whole city would see it. Turning his gaze to Lin Yi, the blonde man stated that the guy would be the main character of the evening, and therefore he had to choose which girl he would perform with. Our hero wanted to refuse, but the enemy said that in that case they would help him make this choice. Realizing that there were villains on all sides, the young man realized that he was in a difficult situation, although he was not going to give up. Fighting back, Lin Yi didn't understand how this was possible, but the opponents were much stronger than him. Even powerful combat skills were useless in this case. For a moment, the guy decided to turn on the charm skill, but the next minute the villains attacked him. Rejoicing in his superiority, the blonde ordered our hero to open his eyes and told the guards to begin hypnotizing him. The young man did not understand what had been done to him, and Van shouted that the boy was now under his hypnosis. Feng understood that all he could do was ask his opponent to let Xiao Yu go with him, saying that he would pay all the expenses. The blonde began to openly mock the red-haired young man, saying that this girl was the cheapest toy that wasn't worth attention. Approaching our hero, Feng began to nag him, saying that it was all true. But the young man did not understand anything, since he was out of control. Lin Yi's new acquaintance continued the work he had started, not understanding why he couldn't bring this guy to his senses. Despite the fact that the Enchanted One did not understand anything, they continued to torment him. Observing the strange picture, Van declared that he was tired of all this and now it was time to start having fun. While the guards were holding Lin Yi, he tried to do something, but he realized that there was some power much higher than him. A moment later, the young man was pushed with one strong movement towards the sofa where the girls were. As he fell onto Xiaoyu, the young man thought that he couldn't hurt her. At this point, the villains turned on the camera, saying that this was incredibly cool. The enemy was delighted with what was happening, shouting that all the city's inhabitants would witness this, telling Feng to prepare to receive the signal. Taking the flash drive in his hands, the young man explained that the signaling device was specially created by their family. After hearing about all the benefits of this device, the blonde said that he did not want to wait any longer, but wanted to start his show. After inserting the flash drive into the laptop, the system immediately notified that it was starting the process of sending visual signals. Happy that the system was loading, the guy said that television was now his. Continuing to film, the villain said that after this video, entry into the city would be closed to young people. Although if the guy begs him on his knees, perhaps he will help with something. Xiaoyu, who didn't understand much, was half asleep and asking someone not to harm her. Our hero fought with himself, and it was not in vain, because the system immediately turned on the alarm. The computer said that the system had detected serious interference in the transgender organism of the host. The fairy said that the young man was sacrificing 10 years of his life to gain immunity. The young man was angry, saying that he was already pretty fed up with all this. Realizing that fairy was angry, Lin Yi asked for forgiveness, stating that there was another option that was aimed at mitigating the impact as much as possible. The computer continued to report that the owner was being upgraded to improve his skills. A moment later, our hero was already enveloped in a blue glow, realizing that the system was working, and better than he thought. Realizing that the broadcast was dragging on, the blonde reached for some button and shouted that it was time to start. At that moment, watching TV, people did not understand what was happening. Some thought that someone had hacked the TV channel. Others thought that it was a live stream in the form of an adventure. And while the surprised spectators were cheering, Lin Yi slowly opened his eyes, realizing that the transformation was already complete. Smiling into the camera, our hero, who was now in the guise of a woman, outshone everyone with his gaze. A mesmerized Feng asked if this beauty was ready to work in the entertainment industry. Wang, who was running to his prisoner, said that he needed to be more serious. A second later, the blonde asked where the young man had gone. Hearing the guy and female guys say that it was time for them to have some fun, Lin Yi shielded the girls with his body, realizing that he would now fight for them even more fiercely. Wang, who was still perplexed, pointed his finger at the young man, saying that no matter who he or she was, if the person was connected to his enemy, our hero, then things would definitely be bad. After this, the young man began to say something about the vegetative state, although he could not really formulate his thoughts. The guy was angry at his stupid opponent, which he told him to his face, adding that he was a real madman. When our hero called the villain a wild dog, the audience watched this verbal altercation attentively, not wanting to miss even a little bit. Suddenly, Lin Yi shouted at someone to kneel down. Turning on the eye charm skill, the young man ordered everyone looking at him to kneel down and not rise until he gave the order. Realizing that he needed to hurry, our hero turned his attention to the guards who were in the hall, shouting at them. And while Xiaoyu rubbed her eyes, not understanding where she was, the young man tried to understand why his charms did not work on the villains. The girl said they had headaches and the guy said they were in a dangerous place, but he would definitely get them out of there. Xu Xiaojing, who stepped forward, couldn't recognize the woman as Ling Yi, so she said that they wouldn't go anywhere with a stranger. Turning to the guards, the young man shouted that they dare not make him their acquaintance because first they would have to deal with him. And then began what our hero had perfectly foreseen. The battle. There were many opponents and only one of him, and therefore it was necessary to come up with something, and rather quickly. The system immediately notified that the hero would not feel pain because physical damage reduction had been activated. And this was a big advantage over his rivals because the guy decided to wait until they were exhausted and only then start taking revenge on them. Not much time passed, and the young man had already begun to do what he had been waiting for a long time. Lin Yi decided that it was necessary to paralyze the eyes because they were negatively affecting control. After some time, the young man adequately assessed the situation and realized that his opponents were still strong, and therefore he needed to take his girlfriends out as soon as possible. Grabbing the girls with both hands, the guy said that he promised not to offend them and kept his word. But they didn't get far because one of the guards threw a table towards the fugitives, knocking them off their feet. Sitting behind this piece of furniture, the beauties said that these guys were very annoying. And then they addressed Lin Yi as a stranger and told her to run because they were waiting for their friend. Realizing that the whole truth had to be revealed, the young man finally said who he was. But after looking at himself, the young man decided to lie, saying that Lin Yi had sent her to save the captives. The guy added that their friend had something to do, and therefore he didn't have to come. At that moment, the boys fell silent because they heard someone's footsteps, which were getting closer with every second. The frightened Xiao Yu didn't know what to do, so she consulted with the stranger, who she thought was the guy. Realizing that the opponents were quite close, the young man asked the girl to think about her Superman, or rather, to imagine that he was her ideal guy. Hearing that the beauty did not understand what was being discussed, our hero began to nag her, saying that she could think of any hero she had probably heard or read about. Starting to cry, the girl admitted that she wanted to help, but her mother forced her to take an interest in music and did not allow her to watch cartoons and films. Lin Yi began to lament, realizing that everything was lost. And even when Xu Xiaojing offered to help, he said that this could not be done. Realizing that the opponents had broken the table, the young man ordered his acquaintances to flee immediately. And again, the opponents began to attack. The young man, in turn, tried to repel these attacks. Realizing that something had to be done, our hero asked Jie Yu to strain himself and think about what a powerful person could be like. For the first few seconds, the upset girl said that she couldn't think of anyone, but a moment later, an idea came into her head. And while Xiao Yu stood there concentrating, the system notified our hero that some kind of transformation was awaiting him. Even though the transformation was still ongoing, the boy fought back because the process was not complete. At that moment, the beauty declared that she had imagined Amitabha, a monk with kindness and sadness. Realizing that this was absolutely not what was needed, the young man asked his girlfriend to think about something more constructive, realizing that she was trying her best. After that, one character began to be replaced by others, but all of them were far from ideal. After a few minutes, the transformation was complete. It was a female image. Xu Xiaojing recognized it as the owner of the Pigsty Alley. But there were still no other options. The good news was that with this role came the lion roar skill, which our hero was going to use. The scream was so deafening that it literally blew away everyone nearby. Unexpectedly, this scream caused even the glass in the hotel to shatter, and Xiao Yu asked how Lin Yi was feeling. The girls did not understand how the strangers managed to transform, but our hero declared that they needed to run away before their pursuers realized what was going on. And just when the guys thought they had managed to escape, they saw the villains who were already blocking their path. The boy was shocked when he saw their shining eyes, not realizing how they could become cyborgs. At this moment, in the VIP room, two strangers were discussing Qin Ru, who was supposed to marry someone from the Qin family. Looking at the door, one of the young men said that Ye Xiaolong was in the corridor. Running into the room, one of the assistants shouted that Wang and Feng had started a fight and had attracted other people. Upon seeing Qin Yaohu, the employee fell silent. But the master ordered him to continue, noting that this man was not their enemy. Holding a tablet in his hands, the young man talked about some scenes he had filmed earlier. The boys stood up from their seats and looked at the cyborgs, not understanding where they came from. After this, the young people decided to go down and see everything with their own eyes. At this point, our hero said that he did not expect that technology was developing so quickly in their country. Suddenly, a fairy appeared and immediately began to criticize these robots. But then, Lin Yi had an idea and began to inquire about the time. And while the assistant was saying that it was already midnight, the young man was complaining that Charming Eyes had a time limit. Getting up from the floor, Wang complained that his legs were numb, and then tried to remember how it happened that he fainted. But what shocked the villain most was that his cyborgs were exposed, and so he decided that no one would get out of the room alive. The young man said that these creatures could use weapons and begin attacking immediately. Hearing this, the young man asked Xiao Yu if she could think of him as the owner of a pigsty again. But at that moment, something happened that no one expected. A knife flew from the other end of the room and hit one of the robots. With anger in his voice, the young master asked Wang how it could be that all the cyborgs had escaped, and now they had appeared in the Cloud City. The blonde man asked in a dissatisfied tone why Ye Xiaolong appeared here, and then began to say some nonsense about Qin Ru's marriage. At this moment, Qin Yaohu intervened, asking if the young man was really trying to get the Wang family to completely leave this city. For a moment, our hero thought, looking at the young people, he remembered how the taxi driver spoke about the 4 most influential families in this city, and now all these young masters were right in front of him. It was hard to believe. Xiaolong is unhappy with what happened, so he said that the situation with Black Panther is personal, he will not touch on it. But robots are a completely different story. Wang didn't want to be intimidated, so he said that if the secret of the mechanical clone leaked, he was afraid that the lady might, and remained silent. After that, he suggested to Xiaolong to wait and see who would win, after which he ordered everyone to begin an emergency retreat. The dissatisfied opponent shouted that the blonde would not be able to leave and come whenever he wanted. One of the elite families called for laser weapons to help him, saying that they were already ready. However, at that moment, Wang and his assistants opened their parachutes and jumped out the window. With glee in his voice, the young man shouted that if the pursuers were not afraid of being exposed, they could try to catch up with him. Although the system immediately notified Xiaolong that the explosion would also affect civilians. Realizing that he couldn't take any risks, the guy cursed, realizing that he had let this bad man slip away again. Turning around, the young man wanted to say something about the 3 girls, but to his amazement, he noticed that they had already left. Running away with all his might, our hero cursed, not understanding what had just happened and what technologies were being discussed. Still standing by the broken window, the young people wondered whether it was okay to let the cyborgs escape. At the same time, Xiaolong noted that the robots might be able to escape, but the Wang family would not go anywhere. And as for the girls, the issue would need to be resolved somehow. Qin Yaohu was as calm as possible, stating that he definitely wouldn't worry about his friend. Taking out a cigarette, Xiaolong noted that his friend was probably interested in what it meant to be exposed. He then explained that in Southeast Asia, where he was on a mission, he had suffered injuries that left his left eye blind and his left arm completely missing. Realizing that his friend also smoked, for a moment the Xiu family representative said that it was unnecessary, but then said that everyone should decide for themselves what to do and what not to do. A moment later, seeing what his friend's hand was capable of, Qin Yaohu jokingly told him to stop joking around. And he said in a serious tone that before it was possible to easily defeat 20 opponents, but considering that they were now robots, it would be difficult to fight even 2. The dangerous thing was that it was unlikely that the Wang family alone was behind all these cyborgs. Of course, they were influential people, but not that influential. Therefore, it was important to find out who they were colluding with. It was pouring rain outside when a taxi pulled up to one of the houses. Our heroine said that the weather was disgusting, and therefore offered Lin Yi, in whom they saw a new friend, to spend the night with them, to which the young man agreed. Having gotten wet in just a couple of seconds, the beauties said that it was necessary to take off their clothes as quickly as possible and go take a shower. Seeing how persistently Xu Xiaojing persuaded our hero to take off his clothes, declaring that they were girls, and therefore there was nothing to be embarrassed about, he, blushing, explained that he would go swimming later. But the red-haired beauty insisted that staying wet was not an option, as it was dangerous to one's health. Xiao Yu couldn't understand what her friend wanted from their new acquaintance. But she stated that the girl had a beautiful figure, but for some reason she was in no hurry to undress. As they headed to the shower, the girls shouted that they wouldn't try to persuade their friend to do the same, but would go when she decided that it needed to be done. Looking at himself in the mirror, Lin Yi decided that no one would bother him, and insist on taking a shower together because he was a boy. Suddenly, the young man remembered how half an hour before they quickly ran into the elevator. Xiao Yu was so scared that she was afraid to even look around. She didn't believe that no one was chasing them anymore. The guy thought that the villains had caused serious damage to the psyche of his acquaintances, and especially to this unfortunate girl, and therefore decided that he would definitely deal with his opponents. Suddenly, the young man took advantage of the memory changes so that the beauties would remember only the most harmless things. After a while, as he was getting out of the shower, Lin Yi decided that this trick with memories worked, and since it did, he could use it on his clients. And while the guy was thinking about this, the fairy appeared, kicked him in the back, and said that this was not the way to do it. Lying on the floor in front of his friends, the young man did not understand how to justify such behavior, and therefore, playing a role, he shouted how good it was that they were all together, and since that was the case, he was going to them. The guy understood that the girls were just about to start washing their hair, and they decided to start with Xiao Yu. But looking at the dripping water and the beauty's cries, Lin Yi decided that if he lingered in the bathroom for even a minute, he would die on the spot. The next day, having become himself, our hero decided to visit his friends. Sleepy Chu Xiaojing began to scold the young man from the doorway, saying that she had called him the night before, but he had simply ignored her. Scratching his head, our hero declared that he was very tired and therefore went to bed early, although the girl immediately felt ashamed for worrying about him. As Xiaoyu walked down the stairs, she called out to her new friend, telling her to get up. Seeing the beauty, Lin Yi immediately started making excuses, saying that he had heard about the incident and was very worried, and therefore wanted to know how the girl was feeling. Our hero's new acquaintance said that everything was fine with them thanks to Lin, who was probably still sleeping. But at that moment, everyone noticed a note hanging on the door. It said that the girl was in a hurry and did not want to burden anyone. But instead of understanding, a dispute arose between the girls about who behaved how and why their friend left so early. While sitting in the kitchen eating breakfast, the young man asked what time the singing competition would be. But Xiaoyu explained that it had been explained, citing that something must have happened to Feng. And then she added that the day before she had filmed a video of the young man singing and sent the video to his parents, who were returning today. Showing his hand, our hero declared that meeting with parents was also one of their services, and, as if by the way, asked to give him a few stars as a token of gratitude, to which the girl agreed. After a while, entering the tea house, Xiaoyu greeted her parents and said that they had already arrived. Grabbing the boy by the hand, the girl introduced him to his parents, who were amazed by what they heard. Although the man immediately remembered the vocal competition, honestly saying that it is rare that at such a young age you can meet guys who sing so beautifully, to Lin Yi's great surprise, this was confirmed by Xia Qian and Mr. Xia, who were also in the same establishment. In response to the question, the girl said that she not only heard about this guy, but also wanted to invite him to a talk show. The young man hoped that his previous client would spare him and not reveal his true background. But she continued to note that she was hoping for an interview with an interesting person. And while the young man said that he didn't mind, Xiaoyu began to get indignant, noting that they had agreed to record a new song together. And then she said that she wasn't as good as Lin Yi, and therefore the recording would most likely not be finished until nightfall. Suddenly, the competitor's eyes simultaneously began to literally scream about jealousy and anger. Realizing that the situation was getting heated, the young man did not know what to do, fearing that the clients would leave bad reviews. Feeling the tension, Xiaoyu's father spoke up, saying that he wanted to ask our hero something. An excited Lin Yi said he would answer any question, hoping that the conversation had moved on. With seriousness in his voice, the man asked the boy to break up with his daughter. The angry girl immediately asked what happened, why the father was against this young man. The woman explained that they were doing this for the good of their daughter, and the father confirmed this, saying that there was a wonderful music school abroad where they wanted to send their daughter. Hearing that the semesters lasted 2 years and there would be no time to do anything else, Xiaoyu sank into her chair, even though her parents continued to talk about her dream and her talents. Suddenly, the girl screamed that this was not her dream, but her parents' dream, and therefore she had no reason to do this. Hearing his father's anger, Lin Yi explained in a calmer tone that he and his girlfriend needed to discuss the situation. Slamming her fist on the table, the beauty declared that she would not go anywhere, and moreover, she would not break up with her young man because of this. Realizing that the man was on the edge, the woman tried to reason with him, noting that their daughter was dating a guy for the first time, and therefore there was no need to get excited. In a calm tone, Mr. Xia said that Tang and her husband should finally give the girl the opportunity to make decisions for herself. He added that if they interfered, it would be counterproductive, asking Xia Qian if she agreed with this statement. At this time, Xiaolong was carefully studying the information regarding the two girls, hearing that there was no information about the third one. Looking at the tablet, the young man realized that no one could compare in beauty to this unknown young lady. But then the assistant said that today, he would show the video that was filmed by Wang. Perhaps it could explain the origin of this lady. And, coming closer, he noted that it was best to start watching the video with the music competition in which student Lin Yi performed. Of course, this young man sings beautifully. But if you listen closely, his voice timbre is more reminiscent of a woman's, and Xiaoyu also has a dislike for men. Hearing the assistant explain that Lin Yi was actually a woman who dressed like a guy, Xiaolong said that he needed to look at things more broadly. Most likely, this young man was pretending to be a girl. A minute later, the young man said that everyone was being watched. Moreover, the guys had recently met in a tea house where Mr. Xia was. Having started watching some video, The man said something about a coincidence. As Xiaqian walked down the street, she talked about how her father had managed to calm Xiao Yu's parents down for a while, which was good news. Turning to her fake boyfriend, the girl declared that it was all a game. But despite this, she turned him towards her and kissed him. Lin Yi was embarrassed, although the beauty declared that they were now actually a couple. Looking at his girlfriend, the young man said that if this was so, then one kiss would not be enough, hinting at a continuation. Approaching our hero, Xiaqian shouted at him, hinting at his wrong habits. After this, the young man began to turn on his charm, while simultaneously scolding himself for not prolonging this wonderful kiss, which could have gone on and on. Laughing, Xiaqian honestly said that she and Xiao Yu were not rivals at all, and that she had once hired this man to be her temporary lover. And then, she added that if the beauty was going to be with Lin Yi for a long time, she wouldn't be able to explain it to her father, although her friend immediately said that she didn't really like our hero. With anger in her voice, Xiao Yu shouted that since childhood her parents forced her to do what she did not want. Perhaps she has a passion for music, but she just wants to write something of her own, and not play according to what was written. The guy immediately noted that he could tell the girl what to do, thereby changing their attitude towards her. Returning to the tea house, our hero, as well as Xiaqian, stated that they would wait outside while the girl talked to her parents. At this time, the guys decided to take a walk in the park, although the girl did not understand how the young man managed to find a solution so quickly, because it seemed something incredible. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi said that if the girl had any difficulties, she could always rely on him for help. Embarrassed, the beauty said that this was exactly what she was going to do, starting with the fact that the guy didn't know, but she had a sister. But at that very moment, the young man noticed how some car was rushing at great speed straight towards his companion. Literally at the last moment, pushing the brunette away, the young man began to complain that there were those who literally chased people around a residential area. However, not even a minute had passed before Ye Xiaolong stepped out of the car. Not understanding what this man was doing next to our hero's house, he already thought that he had been recognized. But the young man, as if nothing had happened, asked if everything was okay with the guys. And while our heroes were saying that everything was fine with them, he introduced himself and handed over his business card, saying that if anyone had any problems after this incident, they could call him right away. Pushing his friend, Lin Yi stated that they were strangers to each other, and therefore there was no need to maintain contact. At this moment, Xiaolong put his hand on our hero's shoulder, telling him not to rush, because more friends, more opportunities. But instead of understanding, the guy quickly turned around and was about to strike. But instead, the opponent's firm hand immediately intercepted the young man's fist. Lin Yi shouted what the stranger was trying to achieve, but the stranger calmly stated that he was not the one who started this fight. Realizing that the opponent was actually strong, our hero decided that it was better to postpone the showdown until a better time, but still tried to activate the charming eyes skill. Looking closely at the young man understood that nothing was working. As Xiaolong stepped back, he said that he didn't want to do anything bad, although the guy immediately asked if someone with good intentions would use the eagle claw on other people. The young man began to deny it, explaining that he was a soldier. And so he reacted. Although Lin Yi did not like it, he understood that this was some kind of test. Within a minute, the young man said that he didn't like playing games, and therefore wanted to ask Mr. E what he needed. And when asked about last night, he said that his cousin Lin Nan was there, and assured him that no one would know what happened at the hotel. Putting his hand on the guy's shoulder, the young gentleman assured him that everything was fine, and as he left, wished our hero a good walk. While driving, the assistant asked Mr. Ye whether his guesses were correct. Xiaolong thought about it and said that there were many nuances. If the appearance could still be somehow disguised, then it was simply impossible to hide the bones of the torso. The guy ordered Gao Bo to keep a close eye on Wang. This was their priority now. If he started to act in any way, they would immediately need to put their original plan into action. The young man also wanted to keep an eye on Mr. Sia's daughter, as well as Lin Yi and his cousin if she really exists. There are guesses that they are first-generation cyborgs. After some time, returning to the tea house, the guys asked their friend how everything went and heard that she decided to study abroad. The young man screamed in fear. He thought that his method had not worked, but it turned out that everything was quite the opposite. Xiao Yu smiled and said that her parents still didn't know that she had heterophobia, but she decided that she would no longer make excuses for her cowardice. Upon hearing that our hero is transgender, Xiaqian began to scream about where such a thing exists. Running up to the young lady, the young man closed her mouth, saying that it was time for their friend to go. and that it would be better for them not to say anything unnecessary. A few minutes before, the parents found out that Lin Yi was the girl Xiao Yu really liked. The girl said that she would go to study abroad, but on the condition that they accept her choice regarding this person. The beauty hoped that the young man would wait for her and dedicate the song she composed to him. After returning home, Jiaqian told her father that they had not had dinner yet, so she would quickly cook something. With some indifference in his voice, the man said that it would be better to leave the food for later, and now they should concentrate on the conversation. The beauty began to justify herself, trying to explain something to her father, but he said that there was no need to say anything. It was all unnecessary. And after that, he said that the topic of conversation would be completely different. He wanted to talk about his sister. The girl was surprised to hear that her mother had died in an accident and her sister had disappeared. But the man did not stop there. He began a new investigation to try to find out at least something. It turned out that after the recent trip abroad, some clues had appeared, and therefore it could be said that there was a possibility that Xiao Xiao was still alive. Falling onto the bed, Lin Yi said that he was exhausted, and Fairy congratulated the young man on successfully completing the second task, for which he received 5 stars. Suddenly, jumping out of bed, the young man shouted that he had been waiting for this moment. All the skills that the guy had before appeared on the board. One of them could remain with him on a permanent basis. Sitting on the floor, the young man began to pray that he would come across a skill related to martial arts, because without it, it was extremely difficult. Suddenly, the system notified Lin Yi that he had been given the ladyboy skill. The enraged young man shouted that this was some kind of setup. The system clearly did not want him to win. The computer seemed to not care. The fairy cried. She explained that the charm of the eyes is a flawless skill that can help in any situation. You need to remember that permanent skills are an improved version of temporary skills. But the computer immediately explained all the benefits, including the ability to transform at any time, as well as improved charm and physical strength skills. The young man said in a dissatisfied tone that perhaps it was not bad, but not quite what he wanted, although the fairy asked him not to rush to conclusions. And a moment later, she added that this skill allows you to transform into any girl, the one you know in real life or saw in a picture. Remembering all his acquaintances, the young man decided that this skill would not have hurt him a few days earlier. Although, realizing its advantage, he began to kiss the fairy. A minute later, she announced that the third task would be more difficult than the previous ones. Although this did not frighten the guy, because he knew that there was more than one left. At this time, Wang sat in front of his sister, asking her for forgiveness for letting her down. Although the girl said that the young man had grown up since he contacted her through the independent satellite of the Feng family. Clenching his fist, the young man angrily declared that this was, of course, all obvious. Standing up from her seat, the girl said that if it weren't for Ye Xiaolong, the guy wouldn't have lost. So there's no need to worry. They'll decide everything else when they get back. Looking at his sister in surprise, Wang asked if she was really coming back, if she had really succeeded in carrying out the Imperial City's plan, hearing a satisfactory answer. And just a moment later, the blonde said that Han Shiming proposed to her that morning. The young man wanted to know who deserved his leniency, while the girl said that they were providing clones to the Han family for mechanical transformation. And she added that it seemed that they had the foundation of cyborg production technology, and therefore, it was necessary to cooperate with them. The power of the 4 families from Cloud City could not be compared with the strength of the Han family. Van couldn't understand why, if these people were so powerful, his sister wasn't afraid to learn new things about them so openly. The girl began to say that this was all a military mission, and Ye Xiaolong was just a pawn, adding that the young man saw the real purpose of the operation. Wang said he understood that his sister wanted to lure the Han family to the city so that they could promote innovation together. Closing her eyes, the beauty noted that Lin Yi was a very ordinary guy who could not be considered an opponent. And then she added that their enemy was Han Shiming, and therefore it was very important for them to use the Han family to transform people. Because compared to eternal life, the young man's current goal is simply nothing. Looking around, our hero could not understand why the client had scheduled a meeting in this particular place, adding that this was his first company. Seeing the 40-year-old man, the young man became frightened, saying that he would rather disappear into thin air than serve this man, although the fairy immediately said that the order could not be cancelled. After this, she added that the customer had special requirements, which concerned the young man hiding his personal information and not mentioning anything during the meeting. At this moment, a stranger began to laugh at Lin Yi and his timidity, saying that he had come to the company to definitely wait for her again. The boy gritted his teeth and hoped that Zhang Na wouldn't provoke him. The man who approached the young man told him not to blame the girl because she could not harm anyone anyway. Taking out his wallet, the stranger said that the young man had probably come for his salary, but warned that it would be better not to go up to the management because they were undergoing a reshuffle. It would be better to stay downstairs. Throwing the money up, the fat man said that this was what he could give to the young man. He added with a hint of sarcasm in his voice that this amount would not be enough for an expensive bag, but for a poor man it was still the money he needed so much. Watching all this, the two employees were talking among themselves that the director's nephew was a very arrogant person. He could do nothing but irritate other people. And now he was provoking Lin Yi. Zhu Hao, taking advantage of his position, humiliated our hero, and he, in turn, was not going to silently tolerate it. Suddenly, a menacing voice was heard behind the fat man, shouting that the manager had no right to talk to people like that, because it spoiled the company's image. Upon seeing President Zhu Zhu, the ill-wisher immediately retreated, saying that in that case he would order that the young man be given his full salary. The angry man shouted at his nephew, saying that important people would soon be coming to see them, and that he was wasting his time insulting others when he could be doing normal things. Turning to Lin Yi, the company president stated that they had never deceived anyone, and if the guy continued to accuse them, he would be prosecuted. However, the young man was not going to stop. He said that the company was deceiving people, not paying them salaries, and only relatives could apply for positions. At this point, other employees began to join our hero, shouting that they had not seen money for months, but were constantly humiliated and oppressed. Hearing what was going on in the company, one of the managers was indignant at how all these people dared to contradict them since they all got jobs. Less than a minute had passed, and security guards and police officers had already arrived at the scene to sort everything out. But the men were not going to do anything. They were looking attentively at everyone gathered. The manager, realizing that no one was doing anything, was now yelling at the security guards, saying that if they didn't do their job, their salaries would also be cut. But the effect was not at all what was expected. One of the employees grabbed the boss by the collar and told him that he also had not seen his salary for 3 months. Despite this, they still wanted something from him. And a second later, those gathered decided that there was no point in wasting time talking, because no one understood them anyway. As he was leaving, our hero heard a female voice. The beauty said that she had been watching everything that was happening, and she really liked how Lin Yi behaved. The guy didn't understand who this young lady was, but she said that she knew everything about the young man and how he was fired without being paid, and therefore she bought this company especially for him. Looking at the stranger with horror, Lin Yi couldn't believe that she had purchased the company just to test him. The beauty added that our young man does not know her, but she officially asked him to become her temporary boyfriend for a week and asked how much it would cost. Having handed over a blank check, the girl said that the young man could write any 7-digit number on it himself. Our embarrassed hero timidly asked his new boss for his name. Taking off her glasses, the beauty introduced herself. She said that her name was Chinru. Her family came from Cloud City. Sitting in a chair, a young man was cursing. He was saying that revealing cyborgs is not that simple. All the problems will be solved when Chinru is destroyed. He added that if he could get the Ye family's uranium-rich land, then the Wang family would have no influence. When inviting Lin Yi into the house, his temporary new girlfriend explained that her brother was rarely home lately, and so she spent a lot of time alone. The young man was delighted with this opportunity and at the same time could not believe that it had been presented to him, although the fairy noted that there was nothing unusual about it. It was time to get used to it. Sitting on the sofa, the beauty asked the young man to do the same, asking him to be as attentive as possible, listening to her every word. In an attempt to please Chinru, the boy declared that he would fulfill any request from his new boss. Taking up the weapon, the hostess of the house asked if the young man could assemble and disassemble it, as real professionals do. Looking at everything that was happening, our hero was in shock. He did not know how best to respond to such a request. At that moment, the girl apologetically apologized, saying that she was behaving too insolently. Looking into the eyes of the beauty, Lin Yi menacingly declared that she was his boss, and therefore he would fulfill any request she made and do everything perfectly. Turning away, the young lady whispered under her breath that this was, of course, good. And a moment later, she added that she liked fighting abilities and adaptability, but she also wanted the young man to be able to use firearms and have a muscular torso. And, winking, she said that she believed that the guy could become a little stronger in one way. Our hero did not understand what was meant, but the girl became embarrassed and then said that she believed that the young man did know what was being discussed. In just a second, Lin Yi connected to the system, which immediately began to connect all the skills that Qin-Ru needed. Smiling, the young man proudly declared that now the beauty should look at him carefully, catching his every movement, easily disassembling and assembling weapons. The guy declared that he would always be the best for his clients, and therefore asked them to give him 5 stars after completing the order. It seemed that the young man was coping with the task so quickly that it was impossible to believe, and then he quickly asked if Miss E would be happy with the type of young man he was. The surprised girl did not believe that there was a living person in front of her who completed the task in just 5 seconds. Blushing, Lin Yi said that he was quite temperamental, and therefore suggested that she take a rest, hinting at something more personal. Suddenly, the owner of the house pointed a gun at our hero, who did not understand what he had done wrong. Looking closely at the guy, Miss declared that she was absolutely calm, and therefore would take the frightened guy somewhere. The very next second, a shot was heard, and the bullet that flew out immediately broke the glass. Realizing that the mistress of the house was not joking, Lin Yi asked what she wanted to show or prove by this. In an innocent voice, the beauty said that she didn't know the gun was loaded, and therefore decided to just joke a little. And, switching to a whisper, she asked the young man to play along with her, saying that there was a murderer behind him. She aimed at him, but missed, only wounding this man. Having caught his breath, our hero asked his new acquaintance not to joke like that anymore. Taking Miss E by the hand, the young man invited her to go upstairs to play something exciting, and in a quiet voice he told her to get up first and he would immediately follow her. Suddenly, the girl immediately started beating her imaginary boyfriend, shouting that he was annoying her, although she understood that she needed to get up, because Lin Yi probably had some kind of plan. Standing behind the curtain on the balcony, the wounded villain said that this lady has a gigolo who is behind an important person in this city. Taking the knife, the man decided that it would be better for him to lie low, and later, when it was too late, he could fight Qin-Ru. Standing in the shower, the girl called out to our hero, asking him if he had prepared another gift for her. Heading towards the shower, the villain said that she no longer needed that young man, because that boy was nothing compared to him. Being prepared to face the opponent, Miss Ye, who was wrapped in a towel, forcefully hit the offender. She sternly told him to get the hell out of her house, where people like him were not welcome at all. Seeing the villain fall to the floor, the beauty arrogantly called him a weakling, incapable of anything worthwhile. Standing in the shower, the guy said that the skill of activating camouflage was very good. It helped greatly in this case, and it can help in the future. After deactivating the skill and putting on his robe, the young man shouted to Qin-Ru that he had easily defeated the intruder, and therefore the beauty could already leave. But instead, the real Miss Ye pounced on Lin Yi, screaming that she would kill him. The frightened mistress of the house did not understand anything, but the young man began to calm her down, telling her that the man who had broken in turned out to be a loser who was not capable of anything. In order to somehow cheer up the frightened Miss E, the young man immediately began to shower her with compliments, although she did not really want to listen to them. At this point, the system notified that the girl began to trust our hero by 60%, and therefore the trust system was opened.